home. Parents there always feel blessed. Mindset strong, they pass the test.
Good evening, morning, afternoon, good night, everyone. Welcome back to the Identity Human podcast. And tonight I'm your solo host, Don. Ray unfortunately couldn't make it to recording tonight, and we have a principle that as best we can, if one of us is available, we will just record. Otherwise, we will become inconsistent, and that's not fair to you guys. We want to release as many episodes as we can to bring as much value as possible. So I was like thinking, what am I going to talk about tonight? And I've got a couple of notes open, and the kids stayed up late, and like Clark was still awake at 8:30 essentially, and he's usually in bed by 7:15, and then he takes a while to go to sleep. And tonight was just one of those where he took longer, and that's okay. It's all part of the process, and we're really learning patience. And I was chatting to someone the other day, and they were like, I will struggle to take advice from someone that hasn't had kids because you just lack understanding. And I go, yeah, I can get what you mean, because kids have this ability to push your buttons at the worst of times, and they can really, really reveal your character. And for me, it's such a good opportunity for us to constantly learn how far off or how close we are to where we need to be when you're stressed and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how do you react once you've made that mistake? It's the perfect example of making mistakes, i.e. losing your temper, not being patient, not following through on what you said you would, and how you follow that up. And where integrity really falls into that picture. Because I think some people try and stick their head in the sand or sweep things under the carpet, and you make a mistake and you don't face up to it. And I think we sometimes get integrity confused. That if you say you've got integrity, it means you never make mistakes. It's not true at all. I think it's how you react to the mistakes that shows your integrity. So from a business sense, I've been using this example a lot lately. It's like, integrity doesn't mean that you're at a meeting at 9 o'clock if that's what time you agreed to start. I mean, obviously it means that if you have everything in your control, you will arrive at 9 o'clock, yes. But sometimes you're just not going to be able to make it. And it's how you react when you've not made it. Apologize, explain why, make the effort and make it not happen again, versus walk in and just pretend like nothing happened. I think there's a very big difference, and sometimes people are scared to face up to that, like having integrity as a core value. But I think it's important to really explore these things and understand what they mean. And I went off on a bit of a tangent. So back to tonight. So have you heard the intro? I did. Wow, we got deep really quickly there, didn't we? Classic Don. In a good way. By the way, I'm not negatively putting myself down. It is. I really enjoy that. But that intro was, I searched AI songwriter, and then I just wrote a little blurb about Don and Ray. We got 4 kids. We live with our parents, or our parents live with us. Got our own businesses and all that kind of stuff. And it wrote this whole song. And I'm not gonna lie, I was impressed. It did a good job at summing up. It's like we're trying our best. We've got family, we've got businesses going, but we've got mindset sorted. Not that I think you can ever have it absolutely sorted. And then businesses are growing, but never at the cost of love. And I was like, it's such a good. And then you can change it into I should do a rap version. You can you can change it into rave. You can change it into pop music. You can change it into country western. And I was having a bit of fun. I might actually go back to it after this. So I just said and I realized you can't not say a lot if you're in the habit of it. I will get out of it. So I thought, let me tell a story tonight, because the stories I think are quite important. If you're part of this podcast and you're joining the journey, it's all very well listening to, how we could put mastery, what we're trying to achieve is mastery, right? Outright mastery. And I heard Tony Robbins explain it in 3 levels. You've got cognitive mastery, emotional mastery, and physical mastery. So essentially what we'll be talking about is, say, cognitive mastery. We talk about principles, we try and tie them into experiences. So for us, it's about, tying in all of the elements that we've got and producing a product to you that's listening, a cognitive mastery, so that you can go out and tie it into your own principles, to your own, not principles, your own experiences, your own emotions, and then go and practice it. And that's how we achieve mastery. So I thought, why not tell you guys a bit of a story about my background, and so you could hopefully pick up where in my decades of life I've picked up this passion for mindset and helping people and all that kind of stuff. Because again, I was facilitating a board meeting today I know it sounds fancy, so if any of you have never experienced it, it's really not. Like, it's just a title. It was literally just a group of 8 people that are at the head of the business, and they actually didn't really know exactly how to run their meetings well and run a team well, and I was there to just help them. And so, as much as they had board, and one of the ladies said, you know, I've got board level certification and like first class, and I was like, well, there's other ways to think about it. But she was well intended. I feel like it was so interesting being in that meeting and just observing how people are, and I really love that. So a bit of a story as to, like, I'll give you some of my decades so you can go, I really enjoyed Don's story, and yes, when he says these things I can see how it ties in and all that, and I think maybe that's missing, because it's a big part of culture of any business is knowing the story of the business you're getting involved in, because the more you know, the more it means. So I really hope that I can take you on a journey with some of the stories that I'll tell. Not stories I'll tell, like, it's not like I'm working on being a better storyteller, but it's just like sharing my memories, and hopefully that means that when we start to talk about things, you're like, that's where that comes from. It's so interesting. So I'd written on like podcast notes, I could talk stories around rugby, moving country, school, family life, farm life, childhood, marriage, startup, business, like buying a business. There's loads of stories that can go into it. So I thought, let me give you a big, like an overview essentially, and maybe talk 1 or 2 memories. So I was born in Zimbabwe, and we lived on a farm, which essentially at about the age of 12, we had to move off of that farm because it got taken, well, maybe at like 11, we had to move off of the farm because it got taken over by war veterans. And obviously in Zimbabwe, that whole thing happened. That was a real shame, because we were doing really well, and I really love that country. You know, I talk about identity a lot. Why is it important? Is because essentially I've moved country maybe 3 or 4 times, moved houses loads, and I recognize how important it is to have good solid roots so that you're not constantly trying to fit into people around you. And it's that self-confidence element and knowing who you are. So we moved off of our farm, and we packed up everything that we owned into a car and drove off and moved to South Africa at about the age of 12. Started a new school, completely new friends, all boys school. Having come from a co-ed school, I loved my school. My junior school was like called Highlands Junior School. I ended up being head boy there, which was quite a privilege when I look back onto it. And it kind of is answers like, why am I doing a leadership business today? Why am I naturally drawn to that kind of stuff? And I think it's because if I look back at, you know, my history, my upbringing, a lot of those elements I was exposed to, in terms of leadership and team and culture. So we lived on a farm, so it means that I've had first-hand experience with the Shona culture, as well as we had Dutch owners. So the Dutch culture, not that, I mean, I was a bit young then. And then moving to South Africa, you then have Zulus, you have Afrikaans, you have English. Then you come over to Britain, and then you've got the British culture, and then you've got the Cornish culture. Yes, you guys are a separate country. And then playing rugby with Irish people and Scottish people, and you learn, honestly, it's a quick, fast-track way to learn how different people actually are. So where my cultural understanding and like all of that stuff comes from, it's literally just the experiences of interacting with different people. And because I was in rugby, I got to deal with that at quite a high level of like performance, where you get to see the real people, where they come out, what they're made of, what their characters are, what their values are, how they interpret things. And I think it's quite fascinating. So moved country to school, and I think there's the one particular memory that stands out with moving country is literally leaving your family home with everything that you own in a car. So I remember, I think we must have left at like 4 in the morning. We decided we had your farewells, and it was all quite exciting. And I think I've even got some of the books from those farewells, where it's like, I knew I was going to move over to South Africa, become a surfer dude, own a jet ski, and you know, all those like childhood dreams that you look up and you're like, that's what South Africa's all about, because they had the sea. And the reality doesn't really set in, because if your parents do a good job, which I think mine did, they hide a lot of like the pains and the hardships. And I think it only really set in when we left at like 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, with everything that you own in terms of like bags and stuff. And I specifically remember the whole family in the car crying. Just everyone started crying at the same time. And that's just a memory that will stick with me for a long time, because you've got everything that you've built up, all of your identity. I can imagine for my parents in terms of their marriage and how that ended up. It takes a big strain having to start your life up again. And maybe this is where mental resilience comes in, is like we had to learn to be a bit more resilient than we were. Just in case you don't know, my parents did get divorced only when I was 17. And just seeing how things worked out, like we when we moved over, we tried to farm the same crop, or we used to farm something called hypericum. And my dad got a business partner so we could use his land and we would grow, and then they obviously split the profits or however it worked. I didn't really know the nitty gritty. And they expanded, and then the project, and as in the amount of land they were using, and then a disease hit the crop, which means they lost the crop and they didn't have enough money because they'd literally just expanded to save it and plant again. So the company folded, which meant that we'd moved over, bought a house, got onto the farming, and because it all went down the drain, we had to then sell a house. And from then on, it was basically move a house once a year, every year, till I was 17 plus, because I went off to uni. My dad had to become a fertilizer salesman. My mom had to go into office management. I mean, she was really good at what she did, but you were literally just living and surviving. I suppose like it's a really interesting, like you bring Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, I could imagine just being a psychologist at the time of observing how my family just adapted and adopted through those things. I had to go and do an all boys school. My sister went to an all girls school, and seeing how we adapted to our new life. Mom and dad having to be present and guiding us through some hard times as well as going through hard times themselves. So it's really interesting when we look at like mentors and influence and the people around us and the things that you try and achieve and how you get through things in life and where you learn your lessons from. So again, I'm going to bring back in that 3 levels of mastery: cognitive mastery, physical mastery, and emotional mastery and physical mastery. Like, don't discount some of the things you've been through. So I recognize a lot of the mindset stuff I talk about will have stemmed from something I've been through. And if I can pair cognitive mastery, i.e. things I learn in books, things I learn in this day and age, and I can pair them, that means I have a deeper understanding and where I understand them from. So yeah, we moved house once a year, every year till I was 18. And then when I was 18, I went to University of Cape Town, where me and Ray went together because we met when we were about 17. And then again, you were like going to digs or res, and in res you get your room, and then you go home for the holidays, you come back, you get a new room. Then you go home for the holidays, you come back and you get a new room, and then you go into digs the following year, and then you go into another digs, and then me and Ray moved in together. And then we lived there for about a year and then moved over here, so to England. So I moved over when we were about 2013, so I don't know, I was about 24, 25. And even then, you stay in a house for 6 weeks, you then move, and we lived in rented accommodation or rented house for maybe around a year and a bit. And then we bought our first house, which we lived in for about a year and a bit, and then we bought our next house and sold the one we were in just because our family was expanding. We had Miles and Laurie, and then we moved, and then we got another house, and then by that time we'd had 3 kids as Monty was born. My mom was then going to move over, so she didn't have retirement or she didn't have pension. She just gave everything to us kids. So I was like, rugby salary, come live over here. So she came and lived with us. She was going to move into a house of her own, but we just said, why don't you look after the kids, retire, and just be a granny. More because and kudos to Ray, we recognize that as much as we might get a nanny to look after, because Ray was always quite business driven, even though it was only 2 hours maybe ish a day every other day, right at the very beginning when the kids were young. Even then, having a nanny, we recognize that nanny would play a significant role in your children's lives for a year and then move on. And so we were like, why not use granny and do that same thing? And then, because granny's always going to be around as long as she lives. So we did. We asked her to retire, and then we just gave her a place to stay with us. So she wasn't spending money on a house to rent, and she didn't have to then work herself to the bone. And that worked out marvelously. And then one day me and Ray had a conversation, and she was like, should I ask my parents? I think one of us said, I can't remember if it was her or me, it doesn't really matter. Should we ask your parents to live with us? And Ray was like, they'll never say yes. Because they're quite independent, they've still got each other, they like to travel, they're very social. And so we asked, and they said, yeah, they'd love to. So we then had to move again, and Ray thought she was in a forever home because it was a new build, so like very nice and clean. And so we had to then go on the search, and we found our current house, which miraculously had been on the market for maybe a year or two, maybe a year. I'm not going to extend the truth too much. They didn't get the price they wanted. We offered lowball. That didn't work out, and then they dropped the price even more. We offered even lower, and then we met them in between, and we got this house at such a good deal. Now the house we live in's got a pool, so immediately Ray set to work. So this is where her business mind works in. I'm still playing rugby, and just like life is just dandy, right? Like when you're playing rugby, you just focus on that, and literally turned the pool into a business, which is absolutely fantastic. Like it's genuinely watching how that's really supported us. It has been incredible. Now, the one thing that shot us in the foot was, not shot us in the foot, but just made it not as juicy as it could have been, was the energy prices going up. Because obviously we try and keep that pool heated to like 30, 31 degrees so that little babies can swim in it, which means that our heating bill is quite high. But it's all part of it. It's all like part of these lessons. So when we're trying to do this Identity Human podcast, like what we've really struggled with the course that we're trying to release now is niching. Because the mental models for me, from my point of view, they apply to anyone and everyone that can put them to their mind. Because when we simplify personality in the human mind, it really works off very similar areas. Like there are distinct differences, but we're all quite similar. And that's what I can't take my focus off. Like we've got 4 kids, so we could do family stuff, we could do marriage stuff, we could do partner stuff, we could do business stuff, because we've both, started, like Ray started up and is running a very successful business. I started Gas, the e-commerce business, and failed at that. Openly, that's fine. And then moved on to buying a business, which has been a huge lesson in on its own. And that's doing the leadership development, where I got to learn. I've learned so much. Like I actually put together a book list the other day of books that I've listened to and read, and I was like, holy cow, how have I gotten through so many books? And that's because there's been this passion and stuff to want to learn. And I think it was like off the back of Gas not really working as well as I really hoped it would have, because it had so much potential. And I was like, right, if I'm going to do this again, I'm going to do it properly. And I've really gone deep to try and learn as much as I can. I was even chatting to someone the other day that there's an element of imposter syndrome that I had, but I think, and I don't want to say it lightly, because I think imposter syndrome is actually quite serious, whereas there may just be a lack of confidence of self when we talk about self-image and all that. But I also said to him, when he said, that's imposter syndrome, I said, yeah, but that's the reason I was successful, is if you have that, it's because you know that you can do better, and you have to find the balance between knowing you can do better and appreciating where you're at. I know I said I was going to tell a story, but it kind of just naturally evolved into what it is right now. Is we're still on the journey, but there's so much that we've learned that I'm just like, let's start a podcast. If you listen back to episodes 1 to 33, you're going to notice I've been like the world's most popular unproduced podcast. Now, I don't think it was the world's most popular unproduced podcast, because we got to 18 followers, not that I was really advertising or anything, and I was trying to do, by the way, the intro is Skippy, the bush kangaroo. And I haven't really put it out there in terms of getting that interaction or seeing it come back. So I'm going to start having to produce a little bit more, put a little bit more effort into content and really like extending our digital reach. So that's kind of the next phase that we're going into. So telling the story of everything that's happened up to date. I mean, there's lots of memories I can throw in there. Just specifically, I didn't even mention rugby in those memories. It was just more of a timeline of our movements. And who knows what the future holds? But we're quite ambitious, and I am aware that there's a darkness that comes around ambition, and it's about finding the balance. So we still do make sure that we spend loads of time around the kids. We make sure we try and find that balance, which sometimes gets out of kilter. But both ways, sometimes we spend a lot of time with the kids, and I have to tell Ray when she starts to feel guilty, I'm like, you spend more time with your kids than maybe 95% of the world, the working business owning population do. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the direction we go with, like, what level of expertise do we have in terms of experience, in terms of things we've gone through, in terms of what we do. And I'd say like loads. High performance mindset, my psychology degree that I got at University of Cape Town, natural drive to understand the human mind and how it works in performance, so resilience and stress. And from my point of view, I always think about this, like what's the purpose of like Identity Human? Like what's the brand trying to achieve in the long run? And I'm like, it's very similar to what I wanted with gas, and it's very similar to what I put into Samson Almond as the business. Is like, it's a bigger societal understanding that like gas was there to raise the bar of, I wanted to move those that gamed and parents that were involved in it and anyone that used it, like treat yourself like an athlete, i.e. look after your health, look after your mind, and you're going to do a better job at who you are and what you bring to the world. Which was because I was always looking at like, how can we make society a better place, a better version of what it currently is. I got 4 kids, it's quite important. Then Samson Almond is very similar. It's all about raising the level of leadership so that leaders can take us into the next level of society, community, culture, and all the kind of things that come with it. And that's still very much a big focus of mine. Like when I'm working with businesses, I always try and tie it into the bigger picture of what that looks like as you look at the macro level, and how is what you're doing actually contributing to, the United Kingdom and society. And that is something that we need to think about, because if you're in it just for money, I'm very unlikely going to be able to gel with you, because yes, there's money, but it depends what you want to do with that money, and that's where integrity comes in. And then so Identity Human now is trying to just add as much value as possible, like when it's understanding people, how we communicate, how we make you more resilient to stress, how we make marriages better, stopping people from getting divorced and people breaking up and friendships not working and families being dysfunctional. All of those things, there's some common things that we just have to learn, because you don't know what you don't know. That if we each took a little bit of that on and brought it into our own lives, like we're making a big difference there. It's that same, I know that starfish story I think I've said before, it's like there's a million odd starfish washed up on the beach, and there's that guy running up and down picking up a starfish, throwing it in the sea, picking up a starfish, throwing it in the sea. And then another guy walks onto the beach, sees it, and he goes to him and he says, why are you doing that? You're never going to save them all. So the guy picks up a starfish, throws it, and he says, I saved that one, does it again, save that one. And he's like, it's not about saving everyone, it's just about doing whatever you can to save whatever you can. And so for me, it's that, like, we've got 4 kids, we've got to think about legacy, and legacy isn't about me and my name. It's about like, what are we creating for 3 generations time, that a character or value or behavior that you've instilled so strongly now is still around in 3 generations time, when no one knows that it was because you had started that and you had led that. And I think that's what it is. Like, I go into the corporate world and there's people that struggle to be authentic. So when we're teaching leadership, and a big one for me is about authenticity, and I don't mean anything other than the energy that you give off. So if you're authentic in the way you lead, the energy that you give off is going to make people follow you, because there is a level of energy that we give off that we're not even aware of. Sorry, that snorting is my Yorkshire Terrier. They have this thing where their like throats close up, so I have to block her nose and get her to relax. Shame. She's okay. She's really old. So there's a level of energy that, as say, even from leaders that we give off, that we're unaware of, and that's like, it could be your micro expressions, it could be just an energy level that you can pick up. And that's why some people are so good to be around, is they just ooze this energy. Yes, it might be in the way they speak, but generally when you can see someone's going to inspire you by the way they walk into the room, the way they hold themselves, or when they walk into the room, it kind of turns your head. That's the kind of thing that I think we need to really focus in on. And in the corporate world, I've noticed that people struggle to bring that into themselves, because it's not just the corporate thing. And I don't want to make a demon of it, because I think there's lots of value in it, but it's the fact that, like, in a business, it brings a different element of pressure, which takes your focus away from who you are. And that's like money, that's profits, that's KPIs, that's actually running an organization that's supporting 100, 200, 300, 500 people. And there's a responsibility that comes into making sure that that does work, so that you can pay all the mortgages. And that's why people then put themselves last and then start to drop off, is because they get so focused on trying to make sure that everyone else is sorted that they're not. And my big thing is, like, you create a vacuum at the top if you're not sorted out. So we really have to focus on, self-awareness, as in like who you are, what you're about, what you bring to the table, before you can focus on individual impact And then once you can have a good individual impact, i.e. just with a smaller group of people, your team, those around you, then you can focus on the collective impact. But until you've started the foundation of being self-aware or working on your own self-awareness, the foundation crumbles if you only focus on collective. And I think we see that over and over again. So I know I've rambled on, and we've gone from story to lesson to story to lesson, and I hope that's given, if any of you are interested in the background of where I've come from and my interests, I hope that gives a very quick snapshot viewpoint of certain things that my journey, where I've come from, and how they lead to who I am today. I know we could have gone into more depth if Ray was here, and maybe we'll do something similar next week or the following week or whenever that is. So we started to announce the podcast on LinkedIn. I'll start to push it out on Instagram. If you have friends that you think that will benefit from following this, go share it with them. Now we're going to be starting to ask for likes, comments, ratings, all that kind of stuff to just boost us back up. I've got to learn how to put this on different platforms to spread it out there. And yeah, let's see if we can get the message going. Let's see what we attract into our pathway now that we're kind of like, right, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, who's coming my way, who's jumping on board. So yeah, thanks very much for listening this far. I'm going to end it there. Same way I always do. Remember, Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. You raise your level up, you can raise my level up, and I'll do the same for you. You stay classy, San Diego. Thanks very much, everyone. Chat soon. Have a great week.